My name is Barbara. As I sit here in my cozy living room, looking at the photo of our beautiful wedding in Italy, I'm flooded with a mix of emotions. It's been a while since that fateful day, but the memory of the events leading up to it still feels raw. It all started when I received a flurry of missed calls and texts from my family. My phone was practically vibrating off the table. Mom's angry text was the last straw. "Are you trying to embarrass us? Everyone knows you booked that venue. You're making this family look bad." I stared at the screen, my hands shaking with a mix of anger and hurt. I couldn't help but flash back to that brunch at my sister Lily's place. Mom had made it crystal clear that I was second class in the family. "Your wedding budget is $5,000. Your sister's was $90,000, she'd said, as casually as if she were reading the weather forecast. Then, she turned to my daughter Emily, who is 8 years old, a little ball of kindness and innocence. "Emily won't be in the formal photos. We're keeping it traditional," she'd declared. Emily, in her little hand-me-down dress, holding a handmade gift for Lily, had looked so confused. "Mom, did I do something wrong?" she'd whispered, her big eyes filled with hurt. I'd wanted to scream, to tell Mom how wrong she was, but I'd swallowed my anger like I always did. I'd told myself not to ruin the brunch, because in my family, the one who reacts is always the problem. You see, I'm a nail technician. I work long hours in a small salon in the suburbs. I'm good at what I do, and I have regulars who tip well and bring me little treats. But in my family, I've always been the quiet, reliable one, the go-to for when they need something. When Lily got engaged 5 years ago, Mom had called me in a panic. "Barbara, I need you. You're the only one who can handle the manicures for the bridal party," she'd said. And handle meant doing it all for free. Lily had wanted a lavish wedding, a real fairy tale affair in a grand hotel with all the frills. Mom and Dad had poured money into it, taking out loans and borrowing from everywhere, and of course, they'd turn to me. At first, it was just small amounts, $100 here, $200 there. But then it became a habit. Mom would say, "Just until we get through this month," and before I knew it, I was paying for family expenses left and right. I'd done everyone's nails at every family event, no matter how tired I was. And when Lily bought her house, Mom had asked me to help with the down payment. I'd done it because that's what I was supposed to do, right? But Emily had always been an afterthought to them. They'd forget her birthday, give her second-hand gifts, and barely acknowledge her. Still, she'd kept trying to win their affection. She'd draw pictures of our big, happy family, carefully writing grandma in colorful letters. She'd save her pocket money to buy Mom a scented candle. And Mom would just look at her like she was a stranger. When my boyfriend, Tom, a kind-hearted accountant, proposed, I thought things would change. We'd planned a modest wedding, a simple garden ceremony with around 40 guests. We were paying for it ourselves, and I just hoped Mom would see me as more than just a cash cow. But that brunch was her answer, a harsh reminder that I wasn't as important as Lily. That night, Tom came over and found me at the kitchen table, looking at the venue contract. Emily was on the floor, drawing a sad, looking bride standing alone. Tom didn't ask if I was okay. He asked, "What did she say?" When I told him, his jaw tightened. "Barbara, we don't have to do this their way," he'd said. I knew my $2,800 deposit was non-refundable, but I was so tired of being the doormat. I thought about Mom's cold words, Emily's hurt expression, and all the times I'd sacrificed for the family. I moved the cursor over the cancel booking button and clicked. One by one, the confirmations came in: florist canceled, rentals canceled, cake tasting canceled. It hurt, but it also felt like a weight was being lifted off my shoulders. Emily came into the kitchen, her drawing now showing 3 people standing together. "Are we still getting married?" she'd asked. "Yes," I'd replied, my voice surprisingly steady. "Just not like that." Then, Tom told me about his uncle Giovanni in Italy. Giovanni had heard about our situation and had sent a simple invitation for a civil ceremony at his villa near Venice. "Family is not measured in budgets," it had said at the bottom. I'd shown it to Emily, and her eyes had lit up. "Like pasta Italy?" she'd asked. When I told her she'd be in all the photos, she nodded seriously and said, "Okay." The night before we left for Italy, Mom called again. "Have you calmed down?" she'd asked. I told her I'd canceled the venue, and she'd snapped. "That was a family event. You're jealous of your sister." I'd found the strength to say, "I'm done being treated like I'm less. You excluded my daughter." And when she'd said I'd come crawling back, I'd simply replied, "No," and hung up. Italy was like a dream. The air was warm, the canals were beautiful, and Giovanni was the kindest host. He'd welcomed us with open arms, no questions asked. We were married 3 days later. I wore a simple white dress, Tom was in a light blue suit, and Emily had a pink dress with a little flower crown. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Emily had raised her hand and said, "I don't." We'd all laughed, and I'd cried. After the wedding, I posted a photo of the three of us on social media. The reaction was immediate. There were 100 missed calls in a few hours from Mom, Lily, my brother, and aunts and uncles. Mom's texts were full of anger and accusations, but I didn't reply. Giovanni hosted a wonderful dinner for us. Halfway through, he'd said, "In families, there are takers and givers. Takers get angry when the giving stops." And he'd made it clear that in his home, no child would ever be made to feel small. The next morning, I sent a message to my family. "I'm married. Emily is my family. If you can't respect that, you won't be part of our lives or our finances." Then, I canceled all the automatic payments and cut off access to my accounts for family-related expenses. The fallout was swift. Mom said I'd made her cry. My brother said I was overreacting, and my aunt was more interested in the fact that Tom's uncle had a villa. But I didn't respond. When we got back home, our little apartment felt different. It felt lighter. Emily taped a postcard of Venice to the fridge and drew a canal beside it. Tom asked me if I was okay, and for the first time in a long time, I realized I really was. A week later, my cousin Sarah came over with a box of chocolates. She said Mom was telling everyone I'd been brainwashed, but she also told me, "They've been using you, Barbara. Everyone knows it. You stopped, and that's why they're so mad." A few days later, Mom sent one last message. "So this is it? You're cutting us off." I replied, "No. I'm cutting off the part where you treat us like we don't belong." And for the first time in my life, I'm not waiting for their approval. I'm just Barbara, a wife, a mother, and finally, at peace.